Mr. Martin got to his apartment, walking, well before 11. No one saw him go in. He had 2 glasses of milk after brushing his teeth, and he felt elated. It wasn't tipsiness, because he hadn't been tipsy. Anyway, the walk had worn off all the effects of the whiskey. He got in bed and read a magazine for a while. He was asleep before midnight. Mr. Martin got to the office at 8:30 the next morning, as usual. At 8:45, Eugene Barrows, who had never before arrived at work before 10, swept into his office. "I'm reporting you to Mr. Fitzweiler now," she shouted. "If he turns you over to the police, it's no more than you deserve." Mr. Martin gave her a look of shocked surprise. "I beg your pardon?" he said. Miss Barrows snorted and bounced out of the room, leaving Miss Paird and Joey Hart staring after her. "What's the matter with the old devil now?" asked Miss Paird. "I have no idea," said Mr. Martin, resuming his work. The other 2 looked at him and then at each other. Miss Paird got up and went out. She walked slowly past the closed door of Mr. Fitzweiler's office. Miss Barrows was yelling inside, but she was not braying. Miss Paird could not hear what the woman was saying. She went back to her desk. 45 minutes later, Miss Barrows left the president's office and went into her home, shutting the door. It wasn't until half an hour later that Mr. Fitzweiler sent for Mr. Martin, the head of the filing department. Neat, quiet, attentive, stood in front of the old man's desk. Mr. Fitzweiler was pale and nervous. He took his glasses off and twiddled them. He made a small buffering sound in his throat. "Martin," he said, "you have been with us more than 20 years. 22, sir," said Mr. Martin. "In that time," pursed the president, "your work and your, manner have been exemplary." "I trust so, sir," said Mr. Martin. "I've understood, Martin," said Mr. Fitzweiler, "that you have never taken a drink or smoked?" "That is correct, sir," said Mr. Martin. "Ah, yes," Mr. Fitzweiler polished his glasses. "You may describe what you did after leaving the office yesterday, Martin," he said. Mr. Martin allowed less than a second for his bewildered pause. "Certainly, sir," he said. "I walked home. Then I went to Sharaff's for dinner. Afterward, I walked home again. I went to bed early, sir, and read a magazine for a while. I was asleep before 11. "Ah, yes," said Mr. Fitzweiler again. He was silent for a moment, searching for the proper words to say to the head of the filing department. "Miss Barrows," he said finally. "Miss Barrows has worked hard, Martin, very hard. It grieves me to report that she has suffered a severe breakdown. It has taken the form of a persecution complex accompanied by distressing hallucinations." Stop. So now what the old man is saying that Miss Barrows, has cracked, like she's gone crazy. And he says that it's a persecution complex. If you persecute somebody, you're blaming them for something. You're saying that they're wrong for something. You're mad at them, right? And it's also accompanied by hallucinations. And we're going to understand what he means by that in the next part. "I'm very sorry, sir," said Mr. Martin. "Miss Barrows is under the delusion," continued Mr. Fitzweiler, "that you visited her last evening and behaved yourself in a unseemly manner." He raised his hand to silence Mr. Martin's little pained outcry. "It is the nature of these psychological diseases," Mr. Fitzweiler said, "to fix upon the least likely and most innocent party as the source of persecution. These matters are not for the lay mind to grasp, Martin. I've just had my psychiatrist, Dr. Fitch, on the phone. He would not, of course, commit himself, but he made enough generalizations to substantiate my suspicions. I suggested to Miss Barrows, when she had completed her story to me this morning, that she visit Dr. Fitch, for I suspected a condition at once. She flew, I regret to say, into a rage and requested that I call you into the carpet. That I call you in on the carpet. Stop. Okay, so what's going on here is that Mr. Fitzweiler is thinking that Miss Barrows is going crazy. And by going crazy because of all the pressure that he's put on her, she's suddenly then started blaming Mr. Martin for things and saying that he's doing things that he knows, Mr. Fitzweiler knows, Mr. Martin would never do, like drink and smoke and say crazy things about Mr. Fitzweiler. So he knows in his mind that she's just crazy. Okay? When he says that she requested I call you to the carpet, when you call someone to the carpet, it's like you try to call them out on their things. Okay, so like if you do something bad at the job and your boss finds out, your boss is going to call you to the carpet because they're going to want to know what you did and why you did it, and they're going to want to punish you for doing it. You may not know, Martin, but Miss Barrows has planned a reorganization of your department. Subject to my approval, of course, subject to my approval. This brought you, rather than anyone else, to her mind. But again, that is a phenomenon of Dr. Fitch and not for us. So, Martin, I am afraid Miss Barrows' usefulness here is at an end. I am dreadfully sorry, sir, said Mr. Martin. In that instance, we see Mr. Fitzweiler is getting rid of Miss Barrows. He's done with her. He thinks that she's cracked up and gone so crazy because of all the pressure that she's blaming Mr. Martin for everything. And the reason he thinks that she's picking on Mr. Martin is because she was going to get rid of the department. So she's thinking about Mr. Martin. So now she's gotten fired. Okay? And this is exactly what Mr. Martin wanted. He knew she was coming after him. She knew he was coming after his department. So he did what he had to do in order to save his job. So watch this. It was at this point that the door of the office blew open with the suddenness of a gas main explosion, and Miss Barrows catapulted through it. Is that little rat denying it? She screamed. He can't get away with that. Mr. Martin got up and moved discreetly to a point beside Mr. Fitzweiler's chair. You drank and smoked at my apartment, she bawled at Mr. Martin. And you know it. You called Mr. Fitzweiler an old windbag, and you said you were going to blow him up when you got all coked to the gills on your heroin. She stopped yelling to catch her breath, and a new glint came into her popping eyes. If you weren't such a drab, ordinary little man, she said, I think you'd planned it all. Sticking your tongue out, saying that you were sitting in a catbird seat, because you thought no one would believe me when I told it. My God, it's really too perfect. She brayed loudly and hysterically, so she laughed real crazy, and the fury was on her again. She glared at Mr. Fitzweiler. Can't you see how he's tricked us, you old fool? Can't you see his little game? But Mr. Fitzweiler had been surreptitiously pressing all the buttons under the top of the desk, and the employees of F&S began pouring into the room. Stockton, said Mr. Fitzweiler, you and Fishbean will take Miss Barrows to her home. Miss Powell, you will go with them. Stockton, who had played a little football in high school, blocked Miss Barrows as she made for Mr. Martin. It took him and Mr. Fishburne together to force her out of the door into the hall, crowded with the stenograph and the office boys. She was still screaming imprecations with Mr. Martin, tangled in contradictory imprecations. The hubbub finally died out in the corridor. Last page. Here we go. I regret that this happened, Mr. Fitzweiler, said Mr. Fitzweiler. I shall ask you to dismiss it from your mind, Martin. Yes, sir, said Mr. Martin, anticipating the chief's that will be all. By moving to the door, I will dismiss it. He went out and shut the door, and his step was light and quick in the hall. When he encountered his department, he had slowed down to his customary gait, and he walked quietly across the room to the W-20 file, wearing a look of studious concentration. Okay, so what I really like about this story is that it's about a guy who knows that he's in trouble and does what he has to do to survive. And I really like the story because it reminds me of something that happened to me as a kid. I'll say it real fast, and then we'll end on that, and then hopefully you'll get a better understanding of it. All right, so when I was in middle school, we had lockers, and we were able to go to our lockers first, third, fifth, and seventh period. We had 8 periods. So we were able to go before first, before third, before fifth, and before seventh. I remember I was going to class, and I was in like 4th period class, I was in 4th period. And I remember an office worker came and got me and told me I needed to go see the AP, the assistant principal. Her name was Miss Bossett. So I went to her office, and I was worried because I was kind of a good kid. I didn't do anything bad or anything like that. So when the assistant principal wants you, there's a problem. So I went into her office, and I'm sitting there, and I see this kid I know. I can't remember the name. I can see him in my mind, but I can't remember his name right now. Anyways, I see this kid, and he's like, that's him. So I'm like, what's going on? And Miss Bossette says, this kid said that you stole a recorder from the band room and gave it to him, and he put it in his locker. I was like, what? Like, I was really thrown off because, of course, I didn't do it. So I was like, no, I didn't do that. And she goes, okay. So he's telling me that you guys got together right before second period, and you stole it during first period, and you went to his locker during second period. And I stopped and I said, no, I'm sorry. We're not supposed to go to our lockers during second period. We can only go at the beginning of first and the beginning of third. And so I didn't go during second period. And right there, immediately, she stopped everything. She looked at my file. Good student, honor roll, no problems, no visits to the AP, no problems. She looked at his file, constantly in the office, failing classes, skipping classes, and immediately she made a decision. She said, Mr. Sinez, thank you for your time. You may go. And I took off. And of course, he stole it. And this is kind of the same situation that happened right here. My past had predicated the fact that I was a good person. And when they looked at my past and they said that he's a good person, they knew that I couldn't be involved in this bad thing. Well, it's the same thing with Mr. Martin. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. He didn't do anything bad. He'd been there for 22 years. He'd always done his work well. So when he set her up, everything was perfect. It was like, there's no way Mr. Martin drinks. There's no way Mr. Martin smokes. So it was the perfect setup, right? And of course, she takes the bait immediately. She goes and she tells the old man and she says all this. And then what makes it even worse is that after he says, okay, yeah, she's not feeling good, we sent her to the doctor, she burst into the room and she's like, he's lying to you. Tell him how he's a bad person. Tell him how he said he was going to do all this about the old man and blah, blah. Like, she blows everything out of proportion. And that's when she gets canned, right? It's a great story. I love the expression, the catbird seat. When you think about the catbird seat, the thing that comes to mind is, I always get like this image of a cat sitting near a bird, like the cage the bird is in, and the cat's got this look on its face because it's eaten the bird, but nobody can prove it, right? It's like the perfect crime, right? You can't get in trouble, and that's the catbird seat. So I really like this story because it reflects you definitely think that he's going to kill her. You think something bad is going to happen, and then he does all of this, and he fakes you out because he's so perfect. He's got everything planned out. It goes directly the way that he wants it to be planned. He knew exactly everything that was happening. And in the end, it's a little twist because you think he's going to kill her, but he just sets her up, and she takes the bait, and he ends up being the victor. The reason I paired this with the other stories is because of the ending, right? He doesn't kill her. He just gets over on her. He gets over on everybody, and I really liked it. All right, so that's the catbird seat. Hopefully you've taken some notes. Tomorrow I'd like to see what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, and we'll talk about it. All right, hope everything's going good. I'll talk to you tomorrow.